Hello and welcome to Storyline. We're so happy you've joined us for today's online service. Storyline is a new church serving South City, St. Louis, and if you live in the area, we'd love to meet you. We meet in person once a month and in community groups the rest of the weeks. After our worship song, we'll give you a chance to take some next steps in joining us at both of those. We can't wait to meet you. Now enjoy today's online service.
Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes, a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't he wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before him, for he is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Savior, isn't he wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before him, for he is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide.
Like David in the temple, I wanna bring you praise. But like David and his temple plans, your ways are not my ways. You don't need me to build a temple and know that you love me still. Like Israel on the shore, all I see is crashing waves. But like Israel on the shore, through the wild you make a way. I will go where you go, and I will stay where you stay. Cause I don't wanna go if you're not going before me. I don't wanna go if you're not going before me. I don't wanna go if you're not going before me. I don't wanna go if you're not going before me.
Hey everybody, Andy here. I'm one of the pastors at Storyline. We're so glad you're here with us for our online service. We're going to pause here like we do for a minute in just a moment. We're going to move into Josh's sermon. We're still in our Beatitudes series. We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, verse 6 today. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. So take a moment and grab your Bible. And as you do that, we're going to have some slides across the screen. The first one is going to have an opportunity for you to connect with us. As we've mentioned before, families in our church all across the city meet in homes and community groups to watch this very online service. We'd love to connect you with one of those or any other ways that we can connect you in the life of our church. That first slide will give you a chance to do that. Secondly, we want to give you an opportunity to give. We do truly believe that this is a blessing from God, and this is a means of worship to God to give back of what He's already given to us. So of course, we don't expect you to give today, but if you do, we'll humbly accept it, and it will really be a blessing to us as a new church here in the city. Third, it's getting warm outside, the sun is out, we have a socially distanced auditorium. Would you come out if you're in the St. Louis area and visit us at our next in-person service? We meet right now once a month in person, and the next one is June 6th at 4:30 p.m. That last slide is going to give you an opportunity to register to come out to the service. Take a moment here, take some of those next steps. Josh will be up right after that minute break.
Hey everybody, my name is Josh and I'm one of the pastors here at Storyline. As you've already heard, hey, thank you for joining us for our online service. As you've been with us, hopefully for a few weeks, if not longer now, you may have noticed a few things. One is that I like stories. So you don't have to look much further beyond the name of our church, which is Storyline. But if you've been watching and you've listened to a few of our sermons, you also know that I like stories. I like to intertwine stories into sermons because I think they bring life and connection to the truth that God is displaying us in the Bible. But I also like sort of the science behind stories. I like how stories are made up in the different parts of a story. And one of the crucial elements of a story is the turning point. If you look at a story, there's always a turning point that is so important to the build up of the story. It usually intertwines crucial junctures, critical junctures that are taking place in the story, or there's really important character development that's taking place. And one of the essential elements that you will always find in a turning point is that there's a moment of crisis. A turning point creates this moment of crisis. And one of the classic turning points in any story that you probably learn, even in high school literature, comes in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So Romeo and Juliet's this 5-act play, and the turning point comes at the end of the 3rd act. And at the end of the 3rd act, there's a duel that occurs that leaves 2 characters dead and Romeo banished from the country. Now, since he's banished from the country, it obviously separates him from his true love, which is Juliet, which is sort of the main point of the whole entire play. And so this event changes the spirit of the rest of the story as Romeo and Juliet, they have to go to intense extremes in order to stay together. So as we continue our series in the Beatitudes, we come to like this critical turning point in our story as well. The first 3 Beatitudes are characterized as these need Beatitudes. They deal with our personal neediness. So you have things like poor in spirit, which is all about the recognition of sin and the personal neediness that we have. Then you have blessed are the mourners, those who don't just stop at recognizing sin in their life, but truly mourn. They grieve over the fact that there's brokenness and sin in their life. Then you have blessed are the meek, or blessed are the humble. These are the people that have this lowly disposition, that they recognize their place, that they are dependent and needy upon Jesus. They are submissive to him. And then we conclude these need Beatitudes because with this created moment of crisis. So if this is true, if these are the 3 needy Beatitudes, poor in spirit, mourners, and humble, then how are we supposed to live? What is Jesus calling us to as we hit this critical juncture in the Beatitudes? We can't go back to the way that we once lived beforehand. So what is the pattern? What is the way forward here for us? Well, Jesus gives us the answer to these questions with the fourth beatitude. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. So here's what I want us to do tonight. All right, I want us to unpack this beatitude. I want to specifically look at three meanings or purposes of righteousness in this beatitude. I want to consider 3 points of application where we're just trying to take this beatitude and apply it to our life. Literally almost like putting on clothes as we're thinking about this beatitude, that we're putting on this value that Jesus is giving us in the Beatitudes, and then we'll close. So let me set up the meaning of this fourth beatitude really quick. All right. So at the beginning of every beatitude that we looked at, there always starts with the word blessed. Now, in the previous sermons of this series, you've heard us say that this word means joyful or joy-filled. And this is important for a couple of reasons, all right? So every single one of us, every person that's watching this right now, even the person that's in front of the camera right now, we all want joy. We all are pursuing joy. Now, here's the really important thing, is that God also wants joy for us. This is incredibly important because we often associate God with the unfun or the not fun, right? This is a lie that was first instilled in us in the garden, and it's something that continues to seep into our life to the present day. And here's the lie, that God is holding out on us. Literally, the Bible captures what Satan says in the garden. He says, God knows that whenever you eat it, the fruit from the tree, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So here's modern day translation of that. God's holding out on you. If God really wanted you to be joyful and happy, then he wouldn't have told you not to eat from the tree. Instead, like he's holding out on you, he doesn't want you to experience the fullness of this life that you are created to live. He's holding out on you because he's called you not to eat from the tree. God doesn't care about your joy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have forbidden that you eat from the tree. Now, this persona, like I said, has continued to the present day, and you don't have to look very far to find it, all right? So it's reinforced in all the things that we watch. So you have movies that have basically been built off of this persona. So you have the movie Footloose, which is basically this local minister bands dancing for the whole entire town. I mean, literally a crux part of the whole entire story is that God is a killjoy. Then you have characters in sitcoms that are completely dedicated to this type of persona. So you have characters like Kenneth Parcell from 30 Rock, which just has these outlandish views as you watch the show. Then you also have Angela from The Office, which is just a constant killjoy in the office, always killing the fun that's taking place with her rule keeping. And then I've heard it regularly from people like my friends. So as I've made friends with people from as long as I can remember ago, as I've talked with them about following Jesus or coming and following Jesus, maybe for the very first time, something I regularly hear from them is, I want to have fun right now, and then maybe later in life I'll consider Jesus. I mean, I'm even tempted to believe this today. I grew up moving around a lot before I hit high school. And so it felt like every single time that I set down roots, that I was finally getting settled, that our family would be uprooted and then moved to a new place. And so the thing that just got reinforced in my mind is that good things don't last. Good things don't last. Like you have something good for a little while, and then you're going to be uprooted and it's all going to be taken away. These are things that come to my mind because of my own life, my own experiences, but also the things that I watch, the things that are constantly being told to me, these characterizations about who God is. But through the Beatitudes, Jesus is telling us that this could not be further from the truth. God wants joy for you. In fact, he created you for joy. And if this is true, if this is really the case, then what's the real problem? Why do we struggle to really find joy in this life? Why is it something that seems so slippery, so hard to get our hands on? Well, here's the real problem. The problem is not our desire for joy, rather it's our pursuit of it. So let me explain real quick. You see, we are all on a mission to find joy. Every single one of us, we're all on this mission to find joy. We're constantly trying to seek out happiness in this life for ourselves. And we do it in various different places. We do it with our jobs. We do it with our pastimes. We do it with our relationships. I mean, you can fill in the blank, and there's many things that we do in order to truly find joy in this life. So when it comes to our work, we have these thoughts that run through our head that if I could just get that position, or if I could just get that raise, then we'd finally be set, like we would be ready. There's a pursuit of joy. Your pastimes and the recreation. If I just had more time to travel, or if I could go do CrossFit, or whatever the blank would be for you, the things that you do for fun, then I would just be better off. Life would be better if I could have more time for these things that bring happiness and joy to my life. Or if I could just find the one person, if I could find that right one person, then I could finally settle down. I would have somebody that I can share this life with. I would truly be happy. We are constantly seeking out joy in this life in various different places. We make joy our chief objective in life. But the problem is that these things never seem to satisfy our cravings for joy. I've quoted this already by Jim Carrey. I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they can see that it's not the answer, meaning it's not the thing that ultimately produces lasting joy in your life. For other examples, you have Tom Brady. After winning multiple Super Bowls, he's sitting down with a reporter on a camera, and as he's breaking down in tears, says, there's got to be more than this. I mean, he's reached the climax, the pinnacle of his profession. There's nobody that's done it better than Tom Brady. And here he is saying, there's got to be more. There's got to be more than this thing, winning these multiple Super Bowls. And then one of the more recent examples would be all the stuff that's come out about the royal family in Great Britain. I mean, whether it's you watching The Crown on Netflix or the interview that came out with Oprah, the message is really clear and simple. Our pursuit of joy didn't work. Our pursuit of joy, this royal family who seems to have everything, it seems like the very clear and simple answer that they've been giving is it doesn't work. It may look good from the outside, but from the inside, from those of us that have been living this life, we're miserable. And here's why, and I think an old pastor puts it so well. His name is Martin Lloyd-Jones. He says, according to the scriptures, happiness is never something that should be sought directly. It is always something that results from seeking something else. So here's what this pastor is saying about joy, that if it's to be attained, the result is not from it being an end goal or a chief objective in life, but rather it's a byproduct. If you make it your main objective, then it'll always be sort of like this greased up pig. Like you're just constantly trying to get a firm grip on joy, but it always just seems to be slipping out of your fingers. However, if your focus isn't on joy itself, but on something different entirely, then joy comes with it. It's the byproduct. And that something else, according to our beatitude, the fourth beatitude, is righteousness. All right, so blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. Which leads us to this question, all right? So this is a pretty big word and not one that we use on a regular basis. So what does the word righteousness mean? It's a very Bible basic word, isn't it? If righteousness is so important, if it's the thing that we're to crave, the thing that we're to hunger and thirst after in our life, if joy comes as its byproduct, then what exactly is righteousness? All right, so here's my definition for it, all right? Righteousness means that you are right with God because you are free from sin. You are right with God because you are free from sin. See, there's this moral or ethical standard that we are to live by. And the person that is righteous lives by this moral or ethical standard. They have acted rightly. And by acting rightly, they maintain the right standing to relate in their relation to God and to others. They are free from sin. And according to the Bible, the moral ethical standard by which we are to live, the code of ethic by which we are to live, is the law of God. That's why Jesus says just a few verses later in Matthew chapter 5, "Don't think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill them." And he later goes on to just explain how important the law of God is. Now, here's the really critical piece, all right? Righteousness is the thing that we are to make primary. The Bible tells us that when we make righteousness, obedience to God's commands, when we make it our primary objective and we abide by these commands, the law of God, we abide by what he's called us to do in this life, then the gift or the byproduct is joy. You see, we looked at this passage just a couple weeks ago, John chapter 15, verses 10 through 11. Jesus is speaking on this matter to his disciples before he goes to the cross. He says this, "If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I kept my Father's commands," you see, perfect obedience by Jesus, "and remain in his love." Now, here's the really critical piece. "I have told you these things so that my joy." See, Jesus is saying, I have perfectly obeyed the law of God. I've remained in his love. And what he's saying is the byproduct of it is joy. This brought joy to his life. "I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete." You see, Jesus, he was perfectly obedient in his life and ministry. He did everything, crossed the T, dot the I, did everything as God had commanded, and he got joy. It was the byproduct of this. He lived and he walked throughout his whole entire life in perfect relation with God. Never once was there a broken moment in their relationship. And well, here's what he's saying. I walked perfectly because I wanted to remain in his love. That was my ultimate desire, my ultimate objective. His relationship was the primary in my life. I remained in his love and I got God, and the byproduct of all of this was joy that came with having God himself. See, this is what Jesus is communicating to us through this fourth beatitude. If joy is what you want, if it's the thing that you truly desire in this life, and we all want this so badly, we want happiness and joy. We are created for it. The desire is not the bad thing, it's our pursuit. Then you must realize that you'll never possess it or get a firm grip on it if it's your primary objective, the main thing that you're trying to seek out in this life. It only comes as a byproduct. See, if you make righteousness your primary objective, you get God. And then when you get God, joy is a byproduct. Blessed are those who are hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. Now, before we move on to application, I think there's some really important things for us to get a better understanding of this righteousness. So I gave you a definition, but let's tease it out a little bit more. I have 3 points for us that kind of help us tease out what righteousness means so that we can better apply this beatitude to our life. So here's the first one, all right? The first one is that righteousness is inward and outward. Righteousness is both an inward thing and an outward thing. When it comes to righteousness, we know that God is concerned not just about our outward actions, but also our heart. You see, God is equally concerned about, if not more so probably, what goes on in our heart than the outward actions that take place in our life. We know this by what Jesus says about righteousness just a few paragraphs later in Matthew chapter 5. He says this, speaking of the Pharisees, "For I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never get into the kingdom of God." See, this is interesting because the scribes and the Pharisees are the ones known for their moral living at this time. If you wanted a model for what it looked like to keep God's commands, then you looked no further than the scribes or the Pharisees. In the public eye, they were the righteous ones. They were the ones that kept God's law. But God sees more than our conduct. He sees our hearts. And so the scribes and the Pharisees, they're like these impressive tombs. They have these really ornate stones that are above ground with these great engravings on their tombstones. They have this wonderful, they were wonderful with their rule keeping and charming with their words. They could stand on street corners and pray these elegant prayers, but just below the surface was nothing but dead bones. We see this in Matthew chapter 23 from Jesus himself. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." You see, the righteousness Jesus speaks of here in this beatitude, it's both inward and outward. Jesus cares about what we do on the outside, but he's also peering into our own souls. He cares about our own hearts. Our hearts and our lives are to be properly aligned. That's what this righteousness is looking for. And we are not to be like the scribes and the Pharisees, whose conduct marked their ulterior motives. Rather, the motives of our heart, they must match the conduct of our lives. What people see on the outside is what God sees on the inside. So according to this beatitude, this is what we're to long for. That we would be the same on the outside as we are on the inside. That our motives and our hearts would be aligned. That what God sees on the inside is what other people would see on the outside. That's the type of righteousness that Jesus is talking about here. The second thing that we see about this righteousness is that it's to be desired, not necessarily that someone possesses it. It's desired, not possessed. So this first point that we looked at, it should kind of cause us to hold our breath a little bit, right? So an inside and outside obedience, this righteousness that we look as the same on the inside as we are on the outside. That's a huge mountain for us to climb. Like, that's a big call that Jesus is asking of for us here. But the second point, that it is desired, not possessed, should just create this collective exhale in all of us, all right? Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness." So basically, what Jesus is saying here, the posture of the person's heart is saying, I want this. I need this. I crave this. I starve for this, but I don't actually possess it. Why would Jesus say that these people are blessed if they don't have this righteousness that's so critical to our life and our relationship with God? Well, we know from the previous Beatitudes that it's the posture that God is looking for in us. All right, the first step to getting rescued is knowing and realizing that you are lost. There are a couple of things that we know about just who Jesus is speaking of in this person from the Beatitudes that come prior to it. So first, they know their need. Like, it's blatantly obvious to them. My stomach is growling, my mouth is dry. I am in desperate need for food and drink. They know their need, but they are also dependent. They understand that they live in a barren land where there is no food and there is no water. And so for them to have what they need fulfilled, it's going to be completely dependent on someone that's providing it for them. They are painfully aware of the reality and their inability to provide for themselves here in this beatitude. There's nothing that they can do to change their situation. Someone from the outside has to provide what they need. They have to provide their righteousness, or else they starve or dehydrate. So first, it's an inside and an outside thing. Second, it's something that's desired, not necessarily possessed. And this leads us to the last point about this righteousness in the fourth beatitude. It's filled with hope and not despair. The craving that Jesus is talking about here for this type of righteousness does not lead a person to despair, but actually leads them to hope. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Look at this. For they will be filled. One of the more historic football games in all of football history happened in 1987. It was the AFC Championship game. I'm going to explain some terms because I know not all of us are football people, but hang with me because I think this is really impactful. It was the AFC Championship game. So what this means is the game before the Super Bowl. If you win this game, you get to go to the Super Bowl. Like the thing that everybody that is a football player all their lives have been pointing up to this full reality of being able to go to the Super Bowl. And the game's between two teams, Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns. So this is a long time ago. Cleveland Browns is probably the last time the Cleveland Browns were even a good football team. So there's about 5 minutes left in the game, all right? And the Denver Broncos, they're down by a touchdown. They're losing. So there's 5 minutes. They're down by a full touchdown. And to make matters worse, one of their players has just made a terrible decision. So he made this terrible decision, and it puts them 98 yards away from the end zone, almost a full entire football field length away from the end zone. So everything seems stacked against the Denver Broncos in this situation, all right? They're losing. They're running out of time. The game is in Cleveland, so all the fans are cheering against them. They're loud. They're crazy. They're yelling against them, and there's just been this huge mistake that's been made by one of their teammates, and so the morale of the team is just really low. So the Broncos, they gather for a huddle. It's what you do before you go and you do a next play. You come in, you get the play, you talk through things before you go try to execute the play. So the Broncos, they're at this 2-yard line, 98 yards away from the end zone. The team, the offense comes in for a huddle to get their play, to know their assignment so they can go execute it. And as they're all in this huddle, their heads are just low. They're hanging low because they know that everything is stacked up against them. And one of the last people that you would expect is the one that speaks up. So offensive linemen are the ones that block the defense from trying to get to the quarterback. And one of the offensive linemen, his name is Keith Bishop. And he gets into the huddle and he looks around at his team, and then he looks up and he looks around at the fans that are screaming at him. And then he looks at the scoreboard and sees that they're running out of time, that they're down by a touchdown. And then he redirects his focus back to his team. And here's what he says, all right? So to dejected teammates that are in the circle around him, that are about to go to the line of scrimmage to try to do whatever they can to get back into this game, he looks at them as they're morally dejected and he says, fellas, we got them right where we want them. And here's what happened. The Broncos, they drove 98 yards, nearly an entire football field, and they scored that final touchdown. They eventually won the game in overtime, sending the Broncos into the Super Bowl. And this moment has forever been remembered as the drive. The drive that they took the full length of the field to go score, tie the game, and ultimately get to the Super Bowl. Now, each week in the Beatitudes series, we've looked ahead to this point, all right? So we've made a jump to the gospel every single week in our series so far, the hope and forgiveness that we have in Christ Jesus. But what we need to remember is that Jesus listeners don't have the full story like we do. They don't have all the Beatitudes that have progressed beyond the ones that they heard that just rolled off the lips of Jesus. They don't know the full span of Jesus' life and ministry, his life, death, and resurrection. They hear the need Beatitudes and they feel like their backs are up against the wall, that they're poor in spirit, that they're needy and they need to feel desperate, that they should be mourning and broken and grieving over the sin that's in their life, that they are to be meek and humble, brought down low or made low, that they are incapable of doing anything about their situation. That's the last words that they've heard from Jesus. Their backs are up against the wall. And here's what Jesus does. He's looking at them and he's looking at us today. He's looking not just at our outsides, but also on our insides. He's looking at our wants and our desires, the deep longings that we have for joy in our life. He's looking at our sense of neediness and desperation. And as our heads are hanging low, our posture is hanging, we are just dejected, we're broken over our sin. Jesus looks us in the eye and he says, I have you right where I want you. See, here's the good news of the gospel. The righteousness that God wants, perfect on the inside and on the outside. The righteousness that we so desperately need. And hopefully at this point, if we're following the projection of the Beatitudes, it's the craving and desire of our hearts. God supplies it for us in Christ Jesus. 2 Corinthians 5:21 puts it so plainly for us. It says, He made the one who did not know sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Charles Spurgeon, a great former pastor from the late 1800s, says this is the great exchange. And here's what this verse means. It means we need righteousness to be fully accepted by God, but we don't possess it. All that we have is our sin. And God has what we need, but we don't deserve in His righteousness. And instead, we have what God despises and rejects. It's this sin that's broken us, it's separated us from God Himself. And here's God's answer to our problem. He sends Jesus. Jesus, the Son of God, who is perfectly sinless, completely righteous, everything that you and I are not. Jesus is exactly what God had dreamt up in His mind. He's been perfect in His relationship with God. And through His death, Jesus takes our sin and He deals with our sin through His death on the cross, paying the penalty that you and I deserved. And what the Bible tells us, 2 Corinthians 5:21 tells us, is that Jesus takes our sin and in exchange He gives us His perfect right standing with God. It's the great exchange. The most unfathomable thing that God could possibly do for us, He did for us in Jesus Christ. Our sin to Christ, Christ's righteousness to us. And this all happens, listen, just by trusting in what Jesus has done for you. That's it. God's not calling you, okay, now that you know that sin is your issue, now here's the thing, I need you to follow these commands. I've shown you that this is what you need in Jesus. Now you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to have the right standing of Jesus. No, that's not what God tells us. He says it's a free gift. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, For you are saved by grace through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is God's gift, not from your works, so that no one can boast. Listen, this is completely and fully the gift of Jesus to you. He takes your sin and He gives you His righteousness. That's it. You believe and you trust in what Christ and Christ alone has done for you. So listen, if you want joy, the very thing that every single one of us are chasing after in this life, it only comes as a byproduct of righteousness. The gift, you see, is God Himself, and joy is thrown in with it. And this righteousness, it's only found in Jesus. That's God's solution to our problem, is that Jesus came and did for us what we could not do for ourselves. He took our sin. We get His righteousness, the great exchange. So here's our application, all right? 3 points. 3 points of application for us. The first one is this. Be filled. This is the promise of this beatitude. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they will be filled. So God gives you what you desire here, which is right standing with Himself. When we trust in Christ for the righteousness that we need, He gives it to us immediately, right then and there. You see, God fully embraces us. He brings us into the family. He wraps His arms around you as His child, and He no longer looks at you and sees your sin, but rather He looks at you and He sees the perfection of Jesus. So listen, this is the promise. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. It's an inside and an outside righteousness. It's a desire, something that's to be desired, not necessarily possessed, but it is filled with hope and not despair. So here's your promise. Come and receive it. Are you filled? Trust in Jesus. Give your life to Jesus, and He will fill you. He comes through on His promises. The second one is feed your appetite. You see, the more you get to know Jesus, the more you want more of Him. See, once you've tasted the sweetness of the gospel, once you've experienced the kindness and gentleness and grace of Jesus, the more we want our lives to be like Jesus and to reflect the life of Jesus in this world. We come to share in the life goal of the Apostle Paul that we find in Philippians 3:10. He says, "My goal is to know him and the power of his resurrection." Literally talking about how everything else is literally crap to him. I mean, there's an even more difficult expletive word that he uses there for that letter. But he's saying, I count it all as lost. There's nothing in this life that even compares to my desire to know Jesus and to know the power of his resurrection. Literally, the way that he changes my life into his. So God takes up this process of us becoming like Christ by giving us his Spirit in this life. So he doesn't say, hey, come to Jesus, and then this is the steroid shot in your arm, now go do it. No, he says, I'm coming and I'm putting my life into yours. I'm going to make your life like that of Jesus by giving you my presence itself. Ephesians 1:13 makes it very clear that God gives himself to us. He says, in him, you're also sealed with the promised Holy Spirit when you heard the word of the truth, the gospel of your salvation, and when you believe. So literally, that's the immediacy of us coming and having the presence of God in our life by God gifting us with the Holy Spirit. And it's by the Holy Spirit that we grow into Christ-likeness by putting to death our former way of life. That's what Romans 8:13 is telling us. So listen, what I'm saying is come and feed the appetite. If we are to hunger and thirst after righteousness, if we've tasted Jesus and he's tasted sweet, we've tasted of the gospel and how refreshing it is to our life, man, keep coming back, feed the appetite. Let's hunger and thirst after this righteousness that has been given to us in Jesus. Now let's slay our former way of life so that we can be more like him in this life here and now. This is not just a future tense, only once we come and we meet Jesus face to face that we can become like him. No, the promise of the Christian life is that as we walk with the Spirit, as we walk with God, that we get to live in communion with him, that he takes our former way of life and he puts it to death and he gives us the life of Jesus. So listen, if you tasted Jesus, keep coming back to his word. Keep coming to him in prayer. Pursue the presence of God in your life. Join a community group that is helping keep you accountable and walking and reading and learning about this faith that God has given us in Christ Jesus. Feed your appetite, put to death the former way of life, and pursue this life of righteousness. And then thirdly, anticipate the feast. All right, so God gives us Christ's righteousness at the moment we believe, yes. We have to continue to work in partnership with the Holy Spirit in this life to slay the former life. It's something that's fully given to us, yes, but it's also something in this life that we keep working and striving and straining towards as well. So here's sort of what it's like, all right? So it's sort of like in our present day. It's like if you got fully vaccinated right now. If you got fully vaccinated, then like you are safe against the coronavirus. But we also can't live and walk in our former way of life. We can't go back to the way that things were yet. We still have this held backness to us. We're fully held and safeguarded against the virus, but we can't function how we were intended to do so. That's what God is saying for us in this, that there's this now and not yet, but there is a day that is coming that we will be able to anticipate the full feast, that will be made perfect like Jesus. That's what we see in Philippians 3:20-21. Our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly wait for a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ. He will transform the body of our humble condition into the likeness of his glorious body by the power that enables him to subject everything to himself. This is what all this is saying, is that when we see Jesus face to face, that he's going to make us perfectly like himself. The shell of who we are, that these broken bodies that we now bear, they'll be given resurrected bodies that are perfect, that will not deteriorate, that we will not struggle with sin, that we will not experience pain or brokenness any longer. We will be made perfectly like Jesus. so we can anticipate the feast. So, hey, listen, keep pressing on. Like, don't give up. Faith in this world, it feels like we're constantly swimming upstream. I get it. It's hard. It's challenging. But don't give up. Stand firm. Keep going in the faith. And here's what 1 Timothy 4:15 tells us. He says, practice these things. Practice the commands. Practice the righteousness that God has given you. Be committed to them. And listen, so that your progress may be evident to all. Like, here's what I want you to see. Progress, what a pastor says, progress is not only what God expects from me, but it's what he allows from me. So listen, as we work with the Holy Spirit, yes, we push forward. We anticipate the feast. It's difficult. It's challenging, but it's just progress that we're after here because it's God who does the final work of making us like Jesus. So anticipate the feast. Stand firm. Let's close with this. It's a quote from a pastor. I think he summarizes everything that we've been trying to get at in this fourth beatitude. He says this. It's from Eugene Peterson, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. He says this: everyone wants to be happy, to be blessed. Too many people are willfully refusing to pay attention to the one who wills our happiness and ignorantly supposing that the Christian way is a harder way to get to what they want than doing it on their own. They are wrong. God's ways and God's presence are where we experience the happiness that lasts. And God's way is the path of righteousness. We are a people who hunger and thirst after righteousness, an inside and an outside righteousness. A righteousness that we desire, that we don't possess, that is Christ, that he gifts to us. And as we have this craving for this righteousness, it fills us with hope and not despair because God has done the work that we couldn't do for ourselves. And ultimately, we are filled. Let's pray. God, I ask that as we think about the turning point that this is in the Beatitudes, that we would embrace what Jesus has done for us, that he gives us his righteousness. And then as we do that, you have enabled us now to walk in that similar righteousness with Christ by giving us the Holy Spirit. So God, may we be filled. May we feed our appetite to be more like Jesus. And then may we anticipate the feast, longing for the day when you will make us exactly like Jesus himself, perfect as Jesus is. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you again for being a part of today's online service. We're so happy you joined us. The slides you saw earlier will play again as we close, so don't forget to take those next steps. Our next in-person service is June 6th at 4:30. We hope to see you there. You mean so much to us, and we can't wait to see you soon.